I'm going to go over the plates with you and how to work them and what it means. And it's if you've never used plates inside of Maya before, it's pretty magical. First thing you're going to do is you're going to set your project. Okay. What setting the project does is it tells Maya, I'm always going to look in this folder and these subsequent folders named a specific thing for all of the files that I need. If you just open the file by itself without setting the project, it's going to open up and be like, where's all my stuff? And you have to go in there and like relink it. And that's a huge pain in the butt. When you set the project, you navigate to the plate that you're going to use, like 40, I named it example project, and you double click on the Maya folder and you hit set. Literally nothing will happen, but it's telling Maya, here's now where all my stuff is. So now when I go to file open, it automatically puts you in the scenes folder. And the only one in there, is whatever the name track scene.ma. And you're going to open it. It opens pretty quick. The first thing you'll notice if you go into your perspective view is you'll have some geometry here. And you'll notice that when you scrub the scene, it's looking a little crazy, right? So essentially what is happening when you create a plate, okay, is first they go out and they shoot it, live action. And then there's an entire department named roto and tracking. And what they do is they take your 2D plate, okay, and this is not an animator's responsibility, okay, and they convert it into 3D. And they have all these cool tools that help them do it. There's some tools that automate a lot of it, and then there's some artistry behind it as well. So it's a lot of technical and artistry to convert that. But essentially, what it's doing is it's creating the geometry in Maya that you see in the video at the correct depth based on the lens of the camera, and it's projecting the texture of what was shot on set like a projector in a movie theater. If you were able to, let's say, put a projector on your head like a movie projector and then look through the lens and have like your eyeball be the thing that projects it out, everything is going to look square because it's aligned perfectly to your eye, right? Obviously there'll be different surfaces, maybe different colors, but because you're aligned perfectly to your eye. But if you look at it from another direction, it's kind of like when you have a flashlight, right? If you put the flashlight like right in between your nose, it's going to be like the shape of that flashlight. But if you start looking at the flashlight kind of from the side and you maybe angle it a little bit, the flashlight is going to like smear on the wall. And, you can make different shapes out of flashlights by pointing them at different objects at different angles, right? Same concept here. What we're looking at is essentially a flashlight of that texture shooting forward and kind of smearing itself on here. Well, why do we need this? Well, when you go into your render cam on these plates and you look at it exactly from the render cam, and for the background, you can enable image planes, and that just gives you your background. That's just a plane. And you can turn off wireframe on shaded. It is exactly lined up as it needs to be from that perspective. There's still geometry here. This is the actual geometry of those items, but you can see here, it's lined up perfectly. The second you move this or try to move this out of the way, it's going to look all smeared and weird. But from this exact angle, that's what lines up. So how do I normally work? I will normally have a perspective view up that I animate in. And then just like full CG, I'll have on another monitor my shot camera. We'll do panels, render cam. I'll show everything here. I'm just going to go show none, show, polygons, and then I'll turn off my grid again, and then I'll show image planes. So it's pretty cool. Now, I'm going to give you a piece of advice. If any of this screws up or messes up and you're getting weird things happening with the rig or anything like that, okay, you're going to come into your animation settings, and this is true like of every major feature studio too. Your evaluation mode parallel, you're going to change it to DG. Parallel gives you much better performance, but to this day, it's buggy as hell. So if there's weird things happening in your scene, you're getting crashing, maybe some of the textures are like flickering, there's things stretching, the rig is doing something weird, change it to DG. This is normally how we work. We have our 3D scene to animate in, and then we have our render view right here. of what the actual, output is. One of the things that animators like to do, myself included, is as you're animating, isn't that going to get kind of annoying to have the texture like constantly sliding as you're trying to like animate something? So what I do is I go up here and I click this button right here that just says use default material, and it just turns it gray. So now you have a nice gray scene, but on your render camera to the left here, you got it all in there. Now that we have this scene, if I was to, let's say, create a polygon sphere right here, you can actually see the sphere appear in your actual viewports here. But what's cool about it is in the plate, because the camera's moving, the sphere is literally inside of your scene. That's what's cool about working with plates. Your camera and all that's all figured out. Can't touch the camera. Can't do anything with the camera, the angle, none of that. You get what you get. But it's pretty cool to be able to be like, oh, I'm going to move this, and I want this to stay on the ground and kind of look like the sphere is, behind there. It's in there. So essentially, when we're importing our characters and our objects and all of this kind of fun stuff, this is what you work in, right? This is how you animate your character. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to reference in Grave. If we like grab our sphere here, our polygon sphere, this can go in front of Grave, and what's going to happen? It's going to go, in front of Grave, and you're shot here, right? It's pure 3D. But there are some things that you will have to do on some plates. This is normal for animators to do little tweaks, and this is what's cool about how we set these plates up. Is do you notice here how there's geometry for the stairs, and there's geometry for the ground, and this kind of back thing, but you see there's railing here, and there's no geometry for that? Well, if I wanted Grave to come over here and climb some of these stairs, and you know how to zoom into the camera without destroying it, right? The key above enter. Okay. It's the / down. Yeah. So you hold that key down, and then you can zoom in and out, and when you tap it again, it goes back to the original camera. So if we look at Grave here, we can see he's behind the stairs, right? But he's not behind those bars. Okay. So if you ever needed to add geometry to the actual scene itself, what you can do is you can create, like here, we'll do a cube. And I'm going to look at my actual scene itself. So we have stairs that come down like this, right? And this looks like it kind of comes up this way and come into this. And we're going to do just a little bit of modeling. And it doesn't have to be exact, it just has to be visual. And I'm looking at this. I'm trying to match this right here, right? So it's like, okay, so I have let's make this a little bigger. So that's cool. So now we have, Grave can go behind that, but it doesn't look like the background, right? It's gray. We just created a primitive. So there is a shader that's built into all these scenes. So you click on this, and you right click, and you go to existing shader, and it's called Surface Shader 1. That's the special shader. You apply that, and what happens? It pretty much disappears, because what it's doing now is it's absorbing the projected texture. And you can take your objects in here and be like, how much further back? Oh, nope, it's got to go further back. All right, you can see from camera, now Grave is behind the bar there. All right, and then you can adjust this and play with it. It's just aligning, just visually what looks good from that angle, right? So if you ever need any of the geometry kind of touched up in the scene, you can always do that. Okay. The things you can't do is, like, I've had students ask me before, they're like, can I animate this garbage can? It's like, well, I mean, no, that's the like, unless it's shot animated, you're not gonna animate it. If a prop needs to occur, that's okay. So I've had students add things like garbage cans or little props around, and it's okay to keep them gray, even when you kind of finish your shot, because that's not your job. They're gonna turn that into a CG object and light it and comp it, and all that. So sometimes animators will just add in little props, but they'll just keep them gray, and then they'll replace it with the real prop later from the props department. We'll get you something.